Grinning Man was a musical, and it essentially tells the story of this man, the hero, Grinning Man, he's called, his journey to find out who he is.
So Andy Serkis saw the musical and loved it so much that he really wanted to immortalise it somehow, and so he mocapped the whole experience in order to turn it into a VR piece.
People, especially a few years ago, got extremely excited by VR, and lots of people were saying that it's completely exactly like normal perception, which is not the case. But what VR can do is it can convey really emotional performances, and it's something that's been really unexplored.
So working with Andy Serkis and all of the mocap data, we decided to work with one song from the musical, which is the song Labyrinth, because it's a really beautiful and emotional and powerful song, and is really the crux of the story for the character's developmental journey.
So The Grinning Man is a kind of VR immersive experience, and is looking at how we can take that performance, which was like a one-to-many performance, and convert it into something kind of smaller and more intimate, and about the both performer and a single audience member connecting.
There's a lot of challenges on a project like this. I guess the biggest one is that we started with data that was from 2018. So we're dealing with motion data that's 6 years old and trying to not just bring it to life, but then manipulate it, augment it so that it feels relevant.
This was a very important part of the experiment for us. We wanted to see whether we could create a system whereby the behavior of the user wearing the headset would in some ways alter the way that the puppet performed the song.
Grinning Man is made up of a recorded performance of a song, which is interpolated in real time using the feedback data gained from the audience's gaze and head position to generate an encounter with a digital avatar that feels live.
There is kind of an abstraction or a disconnection from an audience member when the virtual performer is performing to the world, not to them. What we noticed is as soon as the first systems were put in place and the avatar started locking in to you as an audience member, is people's reactions changed. Even things like body language and spatial awareness. We had an issue at the beginning where the virtual performer would end up walking into you if you stood in the wrong place. But once the performer was aware of you and locked eyes with you, we noticed that people stepped back and out of the way because there's something more human. And so those natural systems of body language kind of seem to kick in.
If you go and see like a theatre performance, one of the things that makes theatre magical is the relationship between the actor and the audience member. And there might be moments where, like in a big musical number, where the main character is addressing the audience, you might make eye contact with a few people. That makes it very, very special. What you don't want is an actor to be on stage and like deadpan staring at somebody for an entire performance. And so the amount of eye contact becomes really important.
The evolution of kind of those ideas is really nice to explore in VR, because the whole thing makes it kind of more engaging, is the fact that when the world starts to behave a bit more like you expect it to, rather than like feeling like everything is running on rails.
I felt much more in tune with the character, and there were moments where it fluctuated between feeling like he had the power and like I had some power, just by the hierarchy of like where he was stood and when he was on the ground.
In an experience like this, you feel a responsibility towards the character that you don't really in a theatrical audience. You have a kind of collective responsibility, I guess. When you feel in VR, when it's just you in the space with them, it does, you feel no one else around to help, so it's going to have to be me.
I liked the way he sometimes caught my eye, but some of the time he didn't. I didn't feel like I was being kind of pinned by his gaze, and I was able to kind of relax and feel a sense of compassion towards the character.
In the end, it feels like we got somewhere. You know, we really kind of have found something where people are more engaged, more connected with the performance that's being given to them. But what's really interesting is when it started working properly, people didn't really know it was there. It was like when you're doing it wrong, people kind of notice it. But once you're doing it right, it's like having a conversation or an interaction with another human. And so it disappears.
The new forms of liveness that we already have with, volumetric broadcasting within the metaverse, for example, could be really interestingly supplemented with some of the experimental work that took place within Grinning Man, specifically the user-specific relationship for the avatar performance and using the sort of real-time feedback to design an experience that is very intimate, despite the fact that it is essentially broadcast for many anonymous audience members, but it doesn't feel anonymous on the other end.
I can see ways in which this experiment might lead to a kind of commercially viable public experience. And the point of an experiment like this is to put the first sketch of something out there and to see what other artists or other promoters or other entrepreneurs might want to make of this sort of leap.